Welcome to Seize the Mains by Malhotra's IS Academy. I am Surbhi Sardana and I am taking this daily answer writing initiative from Monday to Friday at 9 p.m. Today is day 19 of our discussion, starting with displaying the question for Monday's discussion, and the question is: what are public service values? Discuss their role in administration. Answer in 250 words for 15 marks. And send your answers by 9 p.m. of 8th March at rmiasmainswriting@gmail.com. Now, as you know that here we discuss UPSC level sample questions or previous year questions. We discuss how to build answers around them so that you can get more and more marks in mains. You can also share your answers to be evaluated by us entirely free of cost. So this discussion, the discussion for this question will be held on Monday. Try to write an answer before the discussion and send it to us. If you're not comfortable with your answer, you can make some editing and then send it by Tuesday 9 p.m. So you have a lot of time, but make sure that you are in a constant habit of writing answers. Moving on towards our today's question, day 19. And the topic for today is from GS paper 3, government budgeting. Now, government budgeting can have questions from either the static portion, which will consist of the process of budget making, or it can have questions from current affairs. For example, every one or the other year, UPSC has been asking whatever was the allocation or the drawbacks or the good points of the budget of that particular year. So, if that question comes from the current affairs, that's where you need to be prepared with your notes for government budgeting questions. Let's begin by displaying the question. As usual, keep a pen and a paper handy with you and note down the points that come to your mind on seeing the question. And while the discussion goes on, note down any important points that you can incorporate in your answers or that can help you in your journey of answer writing. Also, you don't have to write down everything because the PDF of this presentation is available in the description. So, moving on. Today's question is: critically examine the steps taken by government towards equity and sustainable development through budget 2022 to 23. This is a current affairs based question. You need to know whatever the steps were taken during this budget. So you need to be very well versed with that. Also, this part involves the analysis part. So knowing only the data, that how much allocation has been made towards which sectors or what policies have been launched by the government, that is not enough. You need to have positive and negative aspects for each sector, that which sector would be growing or flourishing and which sectors will see a downfall due to the steps taken by the government. So that's where the analysis part comes in. This is a very tough question, but it can be handled if you are well versed with your budget data and if you have kept reading the newspapers that followed the week after the release of budget. So if you've kept yourself updated with the editorials, newspaper columns after the budget was declared, so you'll be able to answer this question very easily, because every day after the declaration of the budget, one or the other newspaper column is there which consists of addressing one sector of the country, that how a particular sector has been affected by budget. For example, environment, employment, poverty, hunger, things like that. So let's see how we'll address this question. This question will also give you a lot of data to be directly used in your mains exam, and you will know how to address such types of questions which are seemingly tough in your mains paper. So moving on, let's first understand the question. The directive here is critically examine, so you need to check in detail whatever was the information related to all the sectors. Critically examine the steps taken by government towards equity and sustainable development. So these two are very broad terms, equity and sustainable development. The budget itself is released to promote equity and to promote sustainable development or development in the economy. So whatever points can come to your mind, whatever technical points you can incorporate, you must incorporate as many points as you can think of, because these are very broad terms. There are high chances that you will be asked about one particular sector, maybe about healthcare, maybe about education, but through this question we'll be covering all the sectors because these terms are very broad. So you'll be able to address any questions regarding budget. This question has to be answered in 250 words. Obviously this is going to be a long answer and it will fetch you 15 marks. The answer for this question can be sent by tomorrow 9 PM, that is 5th of March. Moving on to building the introduction. An introduction is a conversation with the examiner. Whatever has been talked about in the question or has been asked in the question, you elaborate on that, you elaborate on the question statement, you paraphrase it, and then you present your points of knowledge to the examiner as the first step towards your answer. So let's see what is the introduction for this budget question. The Union Budget strives to enact economic reforms for the country that is recovering from the pandemic and pave the pathway for its robust rise in the coming years. It speaks of an outlook for India at 100 years in preparation for a post-COVID world order. So these two lines are enough to give an overview to the examiner that you've read the budget, you're just praising the budget to start your answer. Now linkage point, as we already know, linkage point turns the direction of your answer towards the body paragraph. After the linkage point, this linkage point has to be there with the introduction only. So this will comprise your one paragraph. Just cut this heading when you're writing your answer. So after the linkage point, you can directly start with your body paragraph. There will be no abruptions after linkage point. So the following are the few broad areas that this budget focuses upon to ensure equity and sustainable development in the country. So now moving on to body paragraph. The body paragraph here has been divided into different sections or sectors which have been addressed by budget. It is always recommended that in long answers, you separate your answers in as many points as you can, or titles and points, like many titles, as you'll see in this answer also. So since the directive is critically examined, so we will take one sector at a time and we will write the drawbacks of the budget allocation or the steps taken by budget with them only. So this also, in our discussions, the word limit has not been adhered to, because we also need to address one topic. We need to explain that issue to you in detail. So you make sure that with all the data that we provide here, you compress your answers within the 250 word limit, and add points from your side also. And if you're writing in point format, it is always recommended that you make at least this type of schematic or diagram, so that the examiner can read that, okay, these are the points addressed and this is what all the explanation is talking about. This will get you more marks. So starting with the body paragraph, the first sector is environment. We will critically examine how budget has affected the environment, or how budget has addressed the issue of environment, and like sustainable development and equity does contain environment part. It is the most important part in sustainable development, so we are taking this point first. The first point is that solar equipment, it is like very costly. So to develop non-fossil fuel based energy ecosystem in the country, according to our commitments towards this COP21 held in Paris, so according to those commitments, we need to shift to electric and solar energy. But for that, funding needs to be there. So the government announced that there would be sovereign government bonds launched for the funding and equipment towards solar energy. So this was a positive step. There were many statutory bodies whose funding or budget allocation has been reduced. Which are these bodies? Commission for Air Quality Management and allocation for National Coastal Mission and Climate Action Plan. These two missions and plans, they help fight disasters related to climate. This helps in coastal areas, disasters related to coastal areas. This has been reduced. So if the funding has been reduced, it will be tougher to fight such disasters and such climate emergencies. So that's a downside of the budget, that it has not addressed these areas. So third point is about the Ken-Betwa rivers. Interlinking of Ken-Betwa rivers has been in news for quite a long time. There has been a huge budget allocation for that. But the point here is that on one hand, it will help improve the infrastructure in the country, but on the other hand, a lot of floods might occur. There is also, these rivers pass through national parks, or so they will be affected and it will ruin the environment surrounding these areas. So if that interlinking takes place, because the rivers, they tend to come into their natural flow. like whatever is their natural path that they follow, they try to come back into that. So if there is development happening by trying to turn the path of a river in some other direction and try to induce some development activities here, with the course of time the river will come back towards this point and flooding will occur in areas that have already developed. So that's an issue. These were the 3 broad areas regarding environment. Here we have critically examined environment part of the question. Moving on to the next part, that is education. So around 11.86% increase has been there in this sector, so that's a good news. There is this one class one TV channel program of PM E-Vidya already running, so more TV channels are being launched under that, so that's another plus point. Virtual labs and skilling e-labs are to be promoted. That was the other point. The 4th point, which is a downside, is that the allocation for digital education has reduced. So these were the only downsides. You don't have to explain too much in detail, just write keywords from these points and frame your answer. Moving on to healthcare and addressing all these sectors very quickly. So there has been an increase in allocation towards many schemes and missions of government. They are National Health Mission, Pradhan Mantri Swasthya Suraksha Yojana, PM Ayushman Bharat Health Infrastructure Mission, very important. Health infrastructure is the need of the hour for India. So if there has been increase in allocation in budget, that's a plus point. So this was a thing, the second point, very important. Cases of rising mental health issues were rising during COVID times, and even before that, during COVID, we actually realized that how important mental health is. So almost for the first time in history of India, this has been addressed. Mental health has been taken seriously, and national tele mental health program has been launched. There are around centers will be developed, who will be coordinated by NIMHANS. So mental health has seen a first step towards being addressed in the country. Regarding women's health, many schemes that were focusing entirely on women or children, their budget allocation has increased. So it has been improved for Mission Shakti, Mission Vatsalya and Saksham, Anganwadi and Poshan 2.0, Poshan Abhiyan. So prepare these schemes for prelims as well, and once you prepared for prelims, note them down in your mains answers, especially when it comes to budget answers. So here we talk about the downside in the last point, because the question is critically examined. There is no mention of vaccines. There is no talks about specific schemes around developing health infrastructure in the country, no specific schemes, and no specific schemes around developing domestic manufacturing of medical devices. You must be aware that medical devices in India are very expensive. In fact, even the drugs that are produced have seen a rise in their rates over the past 2 years, because the basic additives that we use for drugs are not produced in India, they are imported, and similar is the case for medical devices. So these 2 areas, they have not seen any budget allocation or any specific scheme regarding that. So that's a downside for healthcare. Moving on to a next point, that is infrastructure. Very important. Infrastructure generates employment, it generates development of backward areas, and it helps in development and growth. But since growth happens, there is also a negative impact on environment or locals and tribal communities from where these infrastructure projects are developed. So that is always a downside for developing more and more infrastructure. The old story, the old debate between sustainable development and growth, like sustainability, environment protection on one hand and growth story on the other, that goes on. That's a never-ending debate. So whenever it comes to talking about infrastructure, just include the point of sustainable development and environment in that. So environment conservation will suffer. Also, this budget has given a very big push to the private sector. So a lot of capital expenditure has been planned, and private sector needs to come in. So a very motivational budget for the private sector, but social sectors and public sectors have been ignored. So that's a downside. On the plus side of infrastructure sector, this PM Gati Shakti National Master Plan has been given impetus to, and 7 areas, 7 engines of growth. What are these 7 engines of growth? Roads, railways, airports, posts, ports, mass transport, waterways and logistics infrastructure are to be developed, and they are all to be interlinked. So that's a very seemingly very quick plan, and standing from here we can see a lot of development happening in terms of infrastructure. We had this problem of 5G and equity after ensuring equity and equality in society after the launch of 5G services, because the logistics might not be available to all. We might have gaps in the logistics available, so that issue has also been addressed. Also, there would be allocation for 5G in 2023 itself. Coming to employment generation, because jobs need to be there to have disposable incomes and to ensure development and equity in society. So startups need to be promoted, startups will be promoted, and they have been given impetus to in the budget. The second point here is that startups will be promoted to facilitate drone Shakti or drone as a service, to provide small services using drones. So such startups will be promoted, which will lead to employment generation. The MSME industry, it has got like surprisingly good amount of benefits from this budget. So they all the benefits that they were getting have been extended till 2023. All the product linked incentive schemes have been extended for around 14 sectors. So MSMEs have you got a huge boost, and that is genuine also, because the growth of MSMEs provides employment in smaller areas. It just not adds to the GDP, but it also gives jobs to people who cannot migrate to urban areas or cannot leave their homes. So MSME industry is a major job provider when it comes to the growth story of India. So this sector has been promoted. These were the schemes, but the downside of employment generation is because critically examine, again I'm saying that you have to talk about the downside also. Many industries do not like to shift to large enterprises because they're getting a lot of benefits by having registered themselves as MSMEs. So because the government gives a lot of benefits to MSMEs, many industries just don't grow in size. So that's the downside, that the excessive protection and reservation given to MSMEs might prevent them from becoming bigger and more competitive to take advantage of the scale economy. And it has been talked about in one of the previous economic surveys also that this is the case with MSMEs. That's why our MSMEs are not converting into big industries, even when there is so much support of the government. So that support of the government is one of the reasons that they're not turning into big, to prevent taxes, to not have a lot of checks happening from the administrative side. So these are few of the reasons. Make sure that you prepare MSME sector in detail for this year's mains exam, because this was a lot in limelight. These are the some miscellaneous points. The first point talks about the portal that will be launched for skill development or reskilling or upskilling. So make sure you also access this portal and see what the government is doing. The second one talks about one station, one product. You must have heard about one district, one product. So whenever trains stop at a railway station, it is very convenient and it is a very good practice to be for customers to be able to buy the products of that district from the railway station itself. So what does that promote? That promotes the small businesses or in-house enterprises, people working from home, like preparing small things like basic sweets of a particular area. If they can be sold at railway stations in an organized way, and a lot of consumer base can be generated through these railway stations, so that's a plus point. And this one station one product is about that. A lot of import subsidies have been taken away to promote schemes like these, so it helps local businesses and supply chains. One station, one product as a concept aims to promote local product from each stop of the Indian Railways by making the railway station of that area a promotional and sales hub for the product. So these are miscellaneous points. I'm sure you'll have more points from your side also that you remember from the budget updates that you took. So either add them under miscellaneous, or if they come under a particular sector like these: employment, infrastructure, healthcare, education or environment, whether they're positive or negative, just add them under these banners, under these subtitles, or just put them under miscellaneous points. So this was about this answer. This was everything about this answer, and moving on to the conclusion. 250 words question, adequately addressed all the sectors. Conclusion has to be a balanced thing looking forward, because it is a critically examined thing. So you don't have to take a stand, you just have to give a way forward or a very diplomatic, balanced statement that yes, the budget is good, there are some loopholes and they will be addressed well in time. So let's see what is the conclusion for today. The 2022-23 budget was presented in the backdrop of acute unemployment, growing poverty, burgeoning wealth and income inequalities, and accelerating inflation which affect the poor disproportionately. So this is talking about why there were loopholes in the budget, because it was a challenge to produce the budget this year, and in fact in the past 2 years as well. The budget, while walking a tightrope, has tried to cater to all the sectors to put India back on the road to prosperity and sustainability. So adequately addressed, adequately summed up, given the conditions in which the budget was produced and why and how, what was happening. So this is your answer. Make sure you go through it once again. Write your own answer around it and send your answers to us by tomorrow 9 PM, that is 5th of March 9 PM at this email ID. Also the question for Monday's discussion, we have already displayed it in the beginning of the class. Make sure you go through it. Even if you cannot send us full answers before the discussion, if you are unable to generate your content before actual discussion takes place, make sure that you at least write some notes, what you think a good answer should be like. Make sure that you write that, and if you can send your answers before the discussion, nothing better than that. So it's weekend, complete your targets, stay tuned and have faith in yourself, keep sharing your answers, and download the PDF for this presentation from the description below. Take care.